writing and editing are pretty close neighbors, but how did you end up kind of moving over to editing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that it often happens in comics journalism, not always, but often, that if you write enough and contribute enough, and at this point I was contributing to the Comics Beat with Heidi McDonald, you get trusted to edit your own work. And when someone can see that the quality is there all the time and that you're being really conscientious about it, they might then allow you to start editing a couple of other people who need help or who need some sort of coaching or a way in, because comics journalists are often just coming out of the cold. They've had maybe no experience, or they've had a little bit of experience in some other field. So there's a lot of mentoring and training that goes on kind of informally, So I started editing a couple other people's works, just helping them out, almost like a teacher. And I became a contributing editor. That means mainly you edit your own work. And then I started editing some other people's kind of on the side. I went through the same process once I was writing with Bleeding Cool, and there was some overlap between the two. And then there was a sudden jump for me between just editing my own and a couple of other people's work, and then becoming an editor of 80 people's work. So there was a big jump.
That's a huge jump. I mean, you go from just having a couple little projects to being like the main person behind all these articles. So it's it's crazy. When I remember, I must have been, a few years ago, I was doing ads on Bleeding Cool and everything, and I remember at the time it was like, oh, it was Rich's site, and Rich was the guy in charge of anything, and then like overnight it felt like you came in there and were like, okay, no, we do everything,
burned it to the ground. No,
we had you come in and you kind of like shook everything up, and like you were able to take a lot of work and deal with a lot of different writers, and it was really cool to see that. And it was,
well, thank you.
It was a testament to how amazing you are. So.
Well, a lot of things contributed to that working, and one of them was that Rich really wanted that help. He was having to do so much of his own work and try to manage everyone else's. So that was just kind of impossible for a human being to carry that forever. And the site was coming up, I think, on its 5th anniversary at the time, so it was getting pretty big. And it was the full plan of the owners of the site, who's not Rich. Rich is actually one of the founders, but not an owner. They thought, we've got to get some infrastructure in here. And so we all worked together to create a way to do that. And I think it worked out. Yeah.
It was great when you were there.
Well, thanks.
But you've moved on now to comiccon.com.
Yeah.
You're the executive editor there.
Yeah. Actually, the bridge between those two things, professionally speaking, was a year at Dark Horse. So actually, I went from Bleeding Cool to deciding to make that leap to just see what life would be like if I was just a comics editor all the time, didn't do journalism for a while. And I edited quite a lot of work at Dark Horse in the time that I was there. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for me to stay living on the West Coast, so I had to make a decision career-wise to come back east. And I luckily came across this opportunity to work for comiccon.com, which had been a site in the 90s that was quite prominent and had become defunct somewhat, and the URL was still there and still owned by people who are interested in running a site. And out of the blue, almost, I was approached and had a conversation about taking on this gig to basically relaunch a site, and that was exciting for me.